everyone, and welcome back to Mighty Ride Junkies. So today we're going to be talking about the rest of the 1970s of Magic Mountain. If you want to look at the rides that were still around from opening day or the history about the park, you can check out my other videos on my channel. So before we start, if I sound a little different, I'm fighting an awesome cold right now, but who knows, maybe it'll make me sound better.
I just want to say that I have a cold. So if I sneeze in the middle of a song, it's not on purpose.
So let's start with 1972 and Jetstream, which is a log flume ride. Now, what's interesting about this ride was that there was already a log ride at Magic Mountain. On opening day, the park had log jammers, which really was the same thing other than the logs themselves. On Jetstream, you were on a colorful plastic log, while log jammers had the more traditional wood-looking ones. For those of you who have never been to Magic Mountain, you may be wondering why a company would have two similar rides in the same park. And the reason might confuse you. Now, most companies that have multiple parks usually have similar rides in each park, but Magic Mountain had two log rides within a year release of one another. So, log jammers couldn't be outdated, right? Well, considering log jammers wasn't torn down until 2011, you'd be correct on this. The reason for it? Honestly, it contributes to the obesity in America. The park simply wanted guests to have easy access to a log ride on hot days. Apparently, after you stuffed your face with one of the park's amazing funnel cakes, it was too much to tell you you had to walk to the other side of the park for a log ride. That's why they took down log jammers in 2011, because now all the Eric Cartmans of the world had motorized scooters. Now, being someone who has been on both rides, Jetstreamers is definitely the better of the two. You had drops through tunnels and still had that forest feel you got from log jammers, except you didn't have to deal with seeing Gold Rusher and breaking your spine on how bumpy it was. Not to mention, I don't think log jammers could compete with Timber Mountain Log Ride at Knott's Berry Farm, which had already opened. And when Splash Mountain at Disneyland opened in 1989, both log jammers and Jetstream were very much lacking in excitement, unless you were an adolescent teen riding at night. Memories. Jetstream is about 2,000 feet of track and has two actual drops, the first being near the beginning as you fall through a mill-themed tunnel, and of course the second being the finale, a 57-foot drop. The most notable thing about Jetstreamer is that it was one of the first water rides to use the turntable that is very popular on river rapid rides, meaning the logs never stopped moving even while you were loading onto them. It's still a very enjoyable ride, especially on a hot day. So let's move on to the world of DC with Flash Speed Force and Wonder Woman's Lasso of Truth. If you watched my video on the history of Six Flags Magic Mountain, I mentioned DC characters weren't introduced to the park until the early 90s. If you remember that, good for you. You get a star. Both these rides opened in 1974, and both these rides went through major re-themes before it became the DC heroes we know today. So, what is Flash Speed Force? Well, basically a normal carnival ride, like Wonder Woman's Lasso of Truth. Known as the Himalaya from the day it opened until 1986, this Musique Express ride would spin you forward and backwards at about the rate of 14 times per minute forwards and 12 times per minute backwards. It was renamed the Subway in '87 before changing into Acme Atom Smashers in 1994 for the Looney Tunes theme. Strangely enough, the park clearly wanted to isolate the Looney Tunes to certain areas of the park, taking the Acme out of the title in 2005. In 2010, the entire DC land closed, including Atom Smashers, and when the park opened its new DC land the following year, it was the Flash Speed Force. Quick little nerd trivia for all those who didn't know what Speed Force is. It's an energy field where Barry Allen, Wally West, Bart Allen all get their super speed for to be the Flash. Yes, there's more than one. Okay, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman had done a similar trick to the Flash, a centrifugal ride that spins around in the air and on its side, opened as the Electric Rainbow, which sounds like a gay metal cover band before they changed their name to Judas Priest. Anyway, it became Turbo in 1987, which, thank God this name change happened before Arnold Schwarzenegger's Jingle All the Way. I just picture so many kids prior to the start of this ride going, by 1994, it was known as Gordon's Gear Works, and like The Flash, went through a pretty pointless name change in 1999 as Grinder's Gear Works. Now, if you're planning to go to Six Flags in the future for the first time, or you missed these two rides last time you were there, they're directly across from one another. So I shouldn't have to explain when it became Wonder Woman's lasso of truth, if you've been listening. I'm not a big fan of Wonder Woman, but The Flash is pretty fun for the kind of ride it is. Just make sure you find one of those air cartons in the park to have them sit right next to you, and you on the inside. You'll have more fun that way. Trust me. Next, we have the Great American Revolution, which opened in 1976. The ride opened during the bicentennial year of We the People, celebrating our independence from those no-good, fag-smoking King George XI lobsterbacks, who now are our number one allies. The Great American Revolution was a landmark for roller coasters, as it was the very first roller coaster to have a successful full vertical loop. This is a common misconception that drives me freaking bat crazy. The Revolution was the first coaster to have a full vertical loop. No, it was not the first. It was the first one to have a successful vertical loop. The first coaster to actually had a vertical loop was called the Flip Flap Railroad. Say that 10 times fast. And it made its home at Sea Lion Park in Coney Island, New York in 1885. And it wasn't a success. It was tested with sandbags and then live monkeys before people were allowed to ride it. And with not a real neck or back support and the increased G-force that hadn't really been seen at the time, riders suffered minor injuries from neck and back pain to major injuries such as their neck breaking. The ride eventually closed down in 1902. Later, the same designer of the Flip Flap Railroad would make a second attempt with the Loop the Loop. Again, say that 10 times fast. Unlike its older brother, the Loop was steel instead of wood, but it barely lasted a month when it opened in 1908, as it had similar complaints from the Flip Flap Railroad. So the Great American Revolution wasn't the first coaster to have a loop in the ride. It was the first ride to have a successful one. The coaster is 3,457 feet of track and reaches heights of 113 feet and speeds of 55 miles an hour. The ride has 3 drops, the highest being 85 feet, and reaches up to 5 Gs of force. The ride really didn't see any major changes to it for a while. When Six Flags bought the park from the Newhall Group in 1979, they renamed it to the La Revolution, then simply Revolution in 1988, although you can still find the words La Revolution painted on the wall near the entrance of the ride. After the tragic death of a little girl and not many people being interested to ride this ride anymore, Six Flags thought it was best to close it and give it a complete new retheme, which they did. After the ride closed down in 2015, it reopened the following year as the New Revolution. Now, while most rides that get updated, it usually just means fresh paint on the cars and tracks, and sometimes new graphics to go with it if it's an indoor ride. However, the New Revolution, well, was new. The best part of the ride was that you were able to have fun riding on history, experiencing the first successful vertical loop, and going through a lush and intoxicating green forest of trees. I love camping and the outdoors, so this coaster was a big fan of mine visually. The experience, however, of the original Revolution was less than to be desired. See, since it had a loop, you had lap bars and over-the-shoulder restraints. I usually don't have a problem with this, but on this ride in particular, my head would bounce back and forth like an old-school game of Atari between the shoulder restraints. So much to the point that I would get a really bad headache after riding this ride and have to sit and relax to calm it off. With the introduction to the New Revolution, we get better lap bars, making the over-the-shoulder bars completely unneeded, and my head thanks you. Ever been on one of those rides that is going pretty fast only to hit the brakes hard at one point? Like really hard? We're looking at you, California Screamin. Well, prior to the Loop 1 Revolution, the coaster would come to a legit hard stop before going down and up on the loop. This was finally updated with the New Revolution. Now there's only a slight tap of the brakes instead of a complete stop before pursuing the first successful loop in the world. The ride also has been immortalized in a few movies and television shows. That about wraps up this episode of Ride Facts.
For all of you roller coaster junkies like me who are wondering where Colossus is, don't worry, I'll be covering it in a later episode since the upgrade of the ride is technically a new ride altogether. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed yourself or learned something new, smack that like button, and if you want to continue hearing about ride facts, please subscribe. Later.
My sticky shoes. My sticky, sticky shoes.